Gear Patrol calls their new dive watch the best sub-$500 dive watch. Full stop. Men's Health rated them as the most stylish solar watch in the game. Who are we talking about? It's Movement. They're leveling up your gift giving with the sleekest watches you can buy and the biggest deals of the season. Shop 30 to 50% off Movement's innovative California clean watches, jewelry, and accessories with fast free shipping and returns now at mvmt.com. That's mvmt.com.
This is a More Than Just Podcast production.
Welcome to this podcast, Season 4, Episode 10. My name is Tim Mitchell. I am in Toronto, Ontario, and I'm joined once again by Jonathan Kuline in Mississauga, Ontario.
Hello there.
And we have Jaime Lopez Jr. on the line in Seattle, Washington.
How's it going?
Same as last week.
And the week before.
And the week before. And the week before, yeah. I still haven't watched Paw Patrol, but... Okay, so Jonathan, you have some fact check for us.
Just a couple of quick pieces. So we talked last week about how they were casting one of the albino Andorians on the Star Trek Strange New Worlds show. And I knew there was a term for it from Star Trek Enterprise, but I could not remember the name. But they're called Anars, not albino Andorians. So Anars is the term.
And they're actually from the planet of Andoria or the system of Andoria?
Yeah, I can't remember the whole story from Enterprise, and I refused to go back and watch the whole thing just to pull out that one nugget. But I remembered that there was a special term for them because there was a whole storyline about them in Enterprise. Yeah.
You can go to Memory Alpha and look it up too.
That's true. I really could have done that, couldn't I?
I'll do that, yeah.
But they have a distinctive name. They're not just the pasty Andorians as opposed to the blue Andorians.
Yeah. Where's the search button on this thing? Here it is. Okay. So what's your next thing?
The next thing is that last week we were talking about Why the Last Man, the new series that is adapted from the Brian K. Vaughan Pia Guerra comic series from Vertigo. And I had said that it was on Disney Plus here in Canada because that was my understanding from reading an article that should teach me to check my sources. It is in fact airing on FX here in Canada. So if you have FX3 or Rogers or other cable provider, you can watch it there.
Now, did you watch the 3-hour premiere?
I watched the first part of the 3-part premiere this week.
Okay. Did you miss the other two or just didn't know they were on?
I just did not have time to sit down for that much more time and watch 2 more hours of extra television on top of everything else. So
yeah, I think I went to bed really late that night because I PVR'd the 3.
Yeah, I did the same thing, and Number One Fan and I sat and watched the first episode, and then we sort of figured, eventually we'll get to the other 2, and just didn't have time this week. So,
all right. Well, let me do some follow-up on our fact check there a minute ago. So according to Memory Alpha, the Anars are a kind of subspecies, blind ice dwellers. For the most part of our history, they were considered a myth. Stories were told to our children, but 50 years ago, we discovered them living in the northern wastes. This is from Teal'c Shran, 2154, the episode called The Anar. The Anar were a humanoid species native to the northern wastes of Andoria and a subspecies of Andorians. Their population during the mid-22nd century consisted of only a few thousand. Now you know.
And now we know.
Yep.
And so this will be interesting because it's really not a lot further ahead. I can't remember the exact timelines, but from between the timeline of Star Trek Enterprise into Strange New Worlds, it would be years later, but not a lifetime later. So interesting that they're bringing one of those characters into that world.
Yep. Okay, cool. And on to sad news.
Yeah, well, we'll kick off our headlines this week with some sad news. Unfortunately, Canadian comedian Norm Macdonald died this week at the age of 61. He was probably best known as the host of Weekend Update on Saturday Night Live. He was there for about 4 or 5 years. He had a long and illustrious career as a stand-up. He did a whole bunch of other key roles all over the place, did his own movies. For fans of science fiction, he is probably known as the voice of Lieutenant Yaphet, the gelatinous character on the Orville. And it was a real blow. No one apparently outside of his family knew that he had been battling leukemia for the last 9 years, and his death took everybody by surprise. No one really had a sense that it was coming. He just we all woke up one morning and he was gone, and I guess that's how he wanted it. It's just it's a terrible loss. He was a very, very, very funny human being, and just an absolutely unmistakable voice, and a real talent. And it was another one of those hard to take, can't believe he's gone kind of moments there, to find out that he had passed. For our American friends who did not probably even realize he's Canadian, he was born in Quebec City and lived here through his formative years, and then headed south to make his fame and fortune. And it's really upsetting, though. Amongst the people paying tribute to him this week was Seth MacFarlane, of course, is the star of the Orville, and he had to say, to so many people in comedy, me included, there was nobody funnier than Norm Macdonald. You always hoped he would hang around after work was done just so you could hear his stories and get a laugh. He was so hilarious and generous with his personality, and I'm going to miss him. And I think we all feel that way. It's really sad. Sounds like he'd done his parts for the third season of The Orville, which is set to stream on Hulu eventually. But it's really real serious blow there.
Yeah, it's too bad. I mean, I don't know why. There's another comedian that hasn't been well, but I had a sense that he wasn't well. But you're right. I don't think I really knew officially that he was not doing well. But he kind of has been quiet for the last little while anyway, right? Because he was on, other than Orville, he was also on Conan O'Brien a lot.
Oh yeah, one of the all-time great couch guests on those kind of panel shows and stuff.
Yeah, you never knew what you were going to get. It was almost like Andy Kaufman that way, right?
Yeah, it was one of those sad things where, these things happen. You sort of you don't think about these people all the time, and then their death happens, and all the video clips start going around. So this week, the famous clip of him on Conan with Courtney Thorne-Smith just eviscerating her and her movie career, which is one of the funniest clips you will ever see from a show, from one of those talk shows. He is just unbelievably funny as he just on this program just basically takes this woman's segment away from her and just absolutely obliterates her movie career. It's really, really funny. I was listening to a podcast the other day where they were speaking with someone who he had worked with extensively, and he said that David Letterman was apparently said that he was his all-time favorite comedian. And really? Wow. I mean, to be Dave's all-time favorite comedian that's huge, right? This is a guy who knew everybody, saw everybody, lived through the 70s, 80s, 90s of comedy. I mean, he saw the legends go, and Norm was his favorite. So yeah, to the point where he was on his last show as a talk show host.
Yeah, I think I recall something like that. Yeah, he was always sort of like, he was interesting. His whole Saturday Night Live thing, it was like his career as the anchor on was probably the most edgy, other than the early Chevy Chase stuff. But he was quite edgy on that thing. I think he probably surprised a lot of people with his acerbic tastes.
Yeah, did you guys hear it was repeated a few times this week, the story of how he ended up losing his job, getting fired from Saturday Night Live?
No, I mean, I haven't caught up any of the Norm stuff. Now you're making me want to go back and check it out. But,
it's well worth the time. I mean, he is one of the reasons why YouTube exists. His clips, all his little clips from shows, his weekend updates, all that stuff is out there. Please do yourself a favor. If you're not a fan, go look it up. He will make you laugh. But the story was out in a few different of his obituaries this week about how he basically burned his bridges so badly at Weekend Update that eventually they had no choice but to fire him. He apparently could not stop going after O.J. Simpson in the mid-90s and kept going after him. And apparently the guy who was running NBC at the time was actually a friend of O.J. Simpson's. So the notes came down basically saying, like, back off, leave him alone, stop doing it. And he couldn't. He just kept going at it. And so he would go out of his way to put an OJ joke in where it didn't belong. Like, he was just going after it. And apparently when OJ was acquitted of murdering his wife and her lover, Norm started his segment by saying, well, it's official. Murder is now legal in the state of California.
Right.
And apparently that was the last straw, and he was fired that day by the executives at NBC. And while people were up in arms saying, "Oh, that's brutal," and how could you do that? He apparently backed the guy and said, "No, he told me not to do it. I did it. I deserve to get fired. I knew what I was doing, and I'm willing to live with the consequences." So he was that kind of comedian. He was so committed to the bit that he was like, "I guess it's going to cost me my career on SNL, but I'm doing it." And it's still one of the funniest deliveries of all time.
Yeah, for sure.
And after getting fired, they brought him back as a host like a year and a half later, and he fully references what happened. And it's a funny bit because he's like, "All right, we got a bad show tonight," and just ripping the show while he's on it. And I had no idea he was Canadian because he's so curmudgeonly in his humor that it just feels a little, not quite as stereotypically Canadian nice. And if you're not familiar with his humor, for those of you listening, like, I guess it's kind of slightly darker now, given that we know that he died of cancer. But he had a thing of like, why do they say this person, lost their battle with cancer? It's like, you die, the cancer dies. That's a draw. It's not like the cancer goes and sleeps with your wife after we're dead. It's like, wow, that was Norm Macdonald. That was that kind of humor.
Yeah. Wow, yeah. No, he relished in contrarianism. He loved just to argue. He loved to take the opposite position just to see how far he could take the arguments. He was just so good at it. Again, just an absolutely gifted comedian and a tremendous loss. But he was one of a kind. And again, one of the things that he'll live on forever on YouTube for is his portrayal of Burt Reynolds on the Celebrity Jeopardy on SNL, where they had Will Ferrell playing the Alex Trebek character, and he would be there dressed up with the mustache on. He would have Norm on with the mustache on, looking like Burt Reynolds, and just being the biggest ass in the world. And it was such a perfect part for him. And again, this was as a guest spot years after they had fired him.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, Burt Reynolds was the sort of Tom Cruise of the day, right? Like,
he was the biggest star in Hollywood for a good 8-10 years, from like mid 70s to mid 80s. I mean,
and he played the same guy every single time. It wasn't until he came back and did that movie with the stripper movie. Yeah. That was when he sort of came back. That was his renaissance. But yeah, he was like, he had the most gorgeous women falling all over him, right? So
well, I mean, Sally Field and Lonnie Anderson, and absolutely,
Anderson,
and then he had that huge renaissance. I think he got nominated for an Oscar for Boogie Nights, right?
Boogie Nights.
So it's funny how these things all come around. Again, I don't know that I thought about Norm Macdonald all the time, but boy, I know I'm going to feel his loss.
Yeah, I didn't realize he was like same age as me.
We can all agree that is too young to be dead.
Yes, I think so. Anyway, all right. Well, coming out of the Star Trek Day kind of festivities and stuff like that, Jonathan found this link here of a. Well, I heard about this because I heard Leonard Nimoy's wife talking about how she was putting up for auction Spock's ears and one of his tunics, I guess, that he wore on the show. Well, I can't remember which episode. It was one of the movies, right? But so if you paw through this URL, which we're going to have in the show notes, you'll see that there are all kinds of things. Like you can get workout gear. You can get the blue uniforms from like the what do you call them? The Evil Empire ones. Mirror Universe, disco uniforms, the disco uniforms. You can get Sneaker Martin Green's disco workout, Vulcan stuff. There's all kinds of... We
should say for the record, this auction, by the time you hear this auction is closed. It actually closed tonight, and actually you can go on now and see what things went for. So if you want to have a little fun, we can go through that. Like the 25th anniversary pinball machine from the collection of Leonard Nimoy.
Was the one, the pinball
went for
machine,
$7,500 US.
Wow.
A pair of his ears went for $9,000, which doesn't seem like a lot, all things being equal.
Really?
Yeah, so like one of Takuvma's costumes from the first season of Discovery went for $900. Like, we could have come together for $900, guys. Come on, what were we doing here?
These are the what I'm looking at now. These the ones that got listed here. Are they the props? Like even the badges from Disco, right?
Yeah.
Christopher Pike's hero badge.
Yep, the badges were expensive though. Like one of these badges here is almost $4,000. Some of the costumes, they're really like interesting, ornate ones, like the Takuvma costume from the Battle of the Binary Stars went for $4,250 US. Some of them more basic ones went a little cheaper. The Tribbles, there was a lots of Tribbles that were out here, that $1,200, $1,000 for 5 or 6 like real prop used in the show Tribbles. But yeah,
I'm sure the cosplay people were just all over this, right?
Oh, I mean, again, I don't know. I mean, obviously, you know, my mom is the costume designer. I think, could you imagine how much fun it would be to like just have a real close up look at some of this stuff and how it was made and what they did, and like that'd be really neat. My favorite piece was the Torchbearer's knife from the Vulcan Hello. They have this really cool designed ornate knife. It went for $10,000. That was really, really neat. Yeah, just really cool stuff in here though. Jaime, what were you going to bid on? If you could bid on any of this stuff, did you get very far into it?
I didn't go very far, but looking at this article that you've got, I probably would have gone with Sarek's robes from the Vulcan Hello, which went for $3,250 because it looks snazzy, it looks futuristic, but you could also walk down the street like a normal person and blend in if you wanted to. It's got a real like refined look to it.
Yeah.
I was looking at the phaser props. I like those. I bought some of the badges when they started. As a company started making them officially, so I have a couple of like command badges and stuff like that. But the phasers were cool. They had like the colored phasers, which are painted, and then they had the ones that the background characters would use, and they were much lower price because they were just black, right?
Yeah.
But they kind of look like they're 3D printed, but they're in this case they're not. They're sort of molded, but it looks like you could probably 3D print one of these guys.
Yeah,
it would be cool. Yeah. Just don't get caught in it, right?
But yeah, cool stuff. Like, it's funny. I guess it makes sense because theoretically they're not going back to that era, so we don't need those old uniforms. We don't need the old badges. We don't need the old Klingon uniforms if the Discovery is now in the future, right?
Yeah.
So it makes sense that they could part with this stuff. Although, again, I'm sure this is probably, one of the many variations they made of these costumes and stuff like that. It's not necessarily.
How much did Burnham's uniform go for from the number 10 from the Vulcan Hello? Does it say?
I didn't see that one. I saw her exercise kit went for like $1,200 or something, which I thought was both funny and a little creepy because I'm sure someone was like, Sidney Martin Green wore this and sweated in it. Like that's
exactly what I was thinking too.
Yeah, that's not ideal. Yeah, what else we got in here? Yeah, there's just
like if Mariner doesn't wear underwear on her uniform, that would be opposite.
We're just gonna assume that's standard practice now.
Maybe.
But some of this stuff is super cool. Like you have to go deeper into this thing, but like they had Detmer's Mirror Universe uniform, which is like the skirt with the sleeves and the really cool like battle sash and everything. That went for $6,000. But again, put that on a mannequin and put it like in the corner of your room. That is a discussion piece. That's a very cool thing to own, right?
Yeah.
Some of this stuff, it would have been nice to be able to pony up. Personally, I'd have gone for the. They had Killy's uniform in here from the alternate universe, and I haven't found it yet. I know that's in here. I want to see how much it went for, but that it was just a really cool uniform, and B, she was such an awesome character, Killy.
Right, Killy. Yes, Ensign Killy, or Commander Killy, I guess.
I think it was Captain Killy.
Yeah, wasn't she Captain Killy?
Oh, Captain Killy. Okay, maybe. Okay. All right, let's move on to your next story, John.
Yeah, so we talked in our previous episode about how Shang-Chi ended up being a big hit and has done well at the box office, and then we saw that Sony was like, great, we're going to move up Venom, and we'll sort of see what the other dominoes that fall this fall now that they know that people are not terrified to go back to the movie theater. Well, sure enough, this week we got a little bit of confirmation that they are going right back to the theaters. So they have announced, this is Disney, that their rest of its 2021 slate will be exclusive to theaters. They're not doing day and date with Disney Plus. There is no more premium accessing other movies. That is gone. So if you want to see The Eternals, if you want to see The Last Duel, if you want to see West Side Story, you must go see them in the theater, or you must wait for longer till they come out to the Disney Plus.
Well, like it used to be back in the normal times, right? Like if you didn't see it in the theater, you had to wait till it came out on something, right?
Yep. So they're still saying it's same as Shang-Chi. It's going to be 45-day theatrical release window. So it's 45 days to play in the theater before they can put it on any other platform, which I assume will be Disney Plus. And at that point, I don't know if they then go into a premiere access, or if they go right into it's available for the fans. I would imagine it probably goes to premium access, because if they can make an extra few bucks off it, why wouldn't they? But sure. Sounds so we'll be in the same quandary that we were in around Shang-Chi when we get to Eternals. If you want to see it, there's one way to see it on November 5th. You go to the theater or you don't see it.
So how is Shang-Chi doing now? Like, I'm just looking here on my app. Top box office, still a top box office movie.
Well, to be fair, there's not a lot it's competing against right now.
Well, according to this, it's Shang-Chi, Free Guy, Malignant, Candyman, Jungle, whatever. So Candyman came out last week, right?
I think so.
And then and Don't Breathe, right? So those are, I don't know if this is in the order that they're performing, but like cash-wise, Yeah, it says top box office. I assume this is their... Oh, Paw Patrol's in 6th place. You'll be pleased to know, Jaime. So
there you go. Still in the top 6.
Is this the original Labyrinth? No, the original Labyrinth is back in the theaters.
Yep.
Really? What do you know? All right. Cool.
Speaking of Disney, we got a trailer this week. We got the trailer for Hawkeye. And this one is a real one. We got a real look at, what's actually going to transpire on this new Disney Plus series. And we also got a date. We know that it's coming on November 24th. It seems to have a bit of a Christmas theme to it. You can hear the jingle bells playing in the trailer. And I'll be home for Christmas. So Hawkeye finds himself, Clint Barton, that is, finds himself caught up with finding out that someone is walking around dressed like the assassin that he was during Avengers Endgame, and sort of says to his family, well, I'll be home for Christmas, but I got to go sort this out. And it seems like that is the Haley Steinfeld character, would be Kate Bishop, who is well known to comic fans. And it seems like there's a whole sort of passing of the torch storyline happening in there. What did you guys make of the trailer, Jaime?
Yeah, I think we were mentioning in our own chat that like this is Die Hard because it's Christmas and it's got the cop theme kind of going with it. Definitely seems cool. I had joked because of the Die Hard reference that like there's gonna be this showdown with the villain where Hawkeye has a bow and arrow duct taped to the back of his of his t-shirt or something, and he has to take him out. But it looks fun, and it looks like a very different kind of tone from anything else that we've gotten before, which is I think kind of a nice feather in Disney's cap that if you're watching all the various Marvel series, they're definitely not the same. You're getting in for something different with each one.
Well, and that's what we've come to expect from the movies, right? Like they're not just all sort of big action movies. There's, more comedy, more suspense, more, different genres, right?
Yeah, it looks interesting. I mean, like I totally got the Die Hard theme as well from that. But
he can't say the line though, Tim. He can't say yippee-ki-yay blank.
Yeah,
this is a Disney show.
We can't say it either. Well, actually, I don't know if that's true because like Star Trek, it's interesting that they don't bleep some words on. Like I watched the show on Crave today. On television, they do bleep more than on the lower decks than they do on Crave, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I kind of wonder because I mean there have been some Disney stuff where people have dropped bombs, Well,
I mean, here in Canada, we get Star, which is essentially Hulu, and you can actually watch all 5 Die Hard movies on the Disney Plus app here in Canada. So
yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, I don't know. This was one of the ones I was looking forward to most. Again, it seems like they're continuing.
Is it going to be like 8 episodes again, like the rest of them?
They didn't
6?
say that I could see, but yeah, it's probably in that same sort of ballpark. I don't know if they're going to do 6 or 8. It's starting on the 24th, and it does make me wonder: is it going to be over before Christmas? Is it going to be is it It seems like they're doing the same runtime for all these shows, whether it's Loki or whether it's Falcon and the Winter Soldier, whether it's WandaVision. All the shows are roughly the same length. It was just how they broke them up as far as times of particular episodes, and that's how you get the different numbers. But I do wonder if it's going to be sort of timed to end right before Christmas, or if it's going to be carrying over the holidays. How they broke that up.
Right. Cool. And what about Furiosa?
So this is, I don't know how you guys feel about, Mad Max, but, when you have somebody, like George Miller, who works on his movies as long and as carefully as he does, you're kind of willing to wait. Although, he's not a young man anymore. He's been making these Mad Max movies for 35 years, 40 years almost. You don't know how long you want to wait. So they announced this week that Furiosa, which is the spin-off, it's a prequel to the Mad Max Fury Road movie. And Furiosa will be played by Anya Taylor-Joy, who is playing the role that Charlize Theron played in the first one. And they announced it's going to be bumped. So it was supposed to come out in June of 2023, which was already kind of a ways off. Now it's coming out in May of 2024. And it sounds like it's funny because I didn't really know all the details about this. Article from Deadline has a bit of the background on it. So apparently they're going to spend $350 million to make this thing, and it's going to be quite the massive production. It's got Alfre Woodard and a whole sort of star cast in here. Chris Hemsworth, Yahya Abdul-Mateen II. It sounds like they're planning to do another big movie, and if anybody here has seen Fury Road, you'll know it's a big movie. Not a lot happening, but a lot happening. We drive one way, we turn around, we drive the other way. But really, really epically, anyways. I'm excited, but that's a long wait to have this movie come out. I guess we shouldn't be surprised. He's made, 5 of these movies, and it's taken him 40 years. That it's going to take a little longer. He
made the original Road Warrior too?
He did, yeah. He's done the whole shebang, which is funny. I'm just going to quickly look up George Miller's age, because I seem to recall he's not a young man. He's 76.
Yeah.
So he's 76 and turned 76 this year. So he'll be into his, close to 80 by the time this movie hits screens. And again, that's obviously no disparagement. He's clearly still, at the top of his game, making movies like that. But it's it kind of help but wonder if this, might be his last film too.
Yeah. Well, 2024, it's a long way off, right?
It is. And, again, he's taking 6-7 years, sometimes 10 years between pictures, unless he's going to kick out another one at 90. This might be the last George Miller movie. So, yeah. Next up, Netflix has ordered a series based on the Dark Horse comic Grendel. Now, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Grendel. Grendel was a real sort of cult comic created by Matt Wagner, again, sort of a comic creator. Grendel is an assassin, sort of this dark sort of vigilante type character, masked. People don't know who he is. The other really interesting part of the fact, beyond the fact that they've finally decided to use this property, which I think a lot of comic fans recognized was ripe to get into, because it's a really well realized world and a character that's been around for, again, 35 years, is that Abu Bakr Ali, who is on the Katie Keene show that's on CW, who's in Power Book 2. And he's going to be the star. So the first Arab Muslim male actor to portray a series lead in a comic movie. So that's kind of cool. So I'm curious to see what they do with this one. I think those of us who are sort of longtime comic fans always wondered, how they could avoid this one, because it's not big budget. It's not, blow a must of it. It's more like Daredevil. Think Daredevil from Netflix. That's sort of where the world of Grendel is. That sort of dark, urban vigilanteism kind of stuff. So that I'm keen. I'm keen to see how this turns out, because I really like that character. I think this could be really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not familiar with the character, but looking at the comic panel that they have here, I was going to ask you if this is going to be like the live action Daredevil on Netflix, because it certainly had that vibe.
Yeah, it is. It is that sort of similar kind of world, and I actually, it's funny. I've met and spoken with Matt before, and I never thought to ask him if there was sort of a inspiration there, but I think so many comic creators were influenced by Frank Miller's Daredevil of that era that it's hard to imagine that it didn't have some sort of psychic effect on how that played out.
Cool. All right. Also, it looks like there's going to be another Tomb Raider series, animated this time, and Haley Atwell from Captain America and now Agent Carter, and what she has? She's called something else in.
She's Captain Carter.
What If? Captain Carter in What If? Yes, the character that is, but not Haley Atwell. Yeah, so this is coming from Square Enix, and the people who own Tomb Raider. So this is going to be another interesting, fun fact, fantasy action-based, story. This one here, she's going to be in Mexico. Looks like. Oh yeah. Okay.
And I think you had a really good point before we were recording that it's funny that they didn't cast Alicia Vikander, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, if this is going to be a drawn version of Lara Croft, then that makes sense. And Haley Atwell's voice sounds closer to what you would expect from the game with this character. By the way, do you know which Indian actress was going to play Lara Croft, or played Lara Croft for a long time as a model, and is a movie actress now and expected to play her but didn't get the part?
Is that Priyanka Chopra?
No, Rona Mitra.
Rona
Mitra.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes, a distant relative of mine.
Aren't they all?
Well, I think it's a pretty common name in India, but yeah. So just small angle, just a little surprise. Yep. So looking forward to that one, I guess. That's going to be. Do you know what that's going to be on, John? Does it say?
Netflix. Yeah.
The Netflix.
And the
Hulu. The Netflix. Alrighty.
Meanwhile, over at HBO Max, they dropped the first trailer for Aquaman, King of Atlantis. It's funny because when I envisioned that without seeing what they were conceiving, I imagined with a title like King of Atlantis, I imagined that it was going to be some sort of grand, how he runs his empire kind of, sword and sorcery kind of thing. But I don't know if you guys watched this trailer, but it's like a farce. It looks like, it looks like a
SpongeBob SquarePants meets Dr. Seuss. Yeah.
Yeah. And not in a bad way, just not at all what I was expecting. Do you guys think this would be something you would watch?
I don't know. Aquaman's kind of funny character. Like if you watch The Big Bang Theory, they always dressed up as the is it Justice League? I guess it is.
Yeah? Oh yeah.
Yeah, and they would get Penny's boyfriend Zach to play Superman because he's the big muscular guy, and they would all sort of take on the Spider-Man and whatever, and the Flash and that kind of stuff. And it was always Kutrapali who ended up playing Aquaman, because it was sort of the character nobody wanted to play, right? Mm-hmm. So, and he had that goofy sort of seahorse kind of extension on his costume, but and even even with Jason Momoa playing Aquaman, it was kind of like, I mean, he played a really good portrayal, and obviously being from Hawaii that makes sense, but just Aquaman always just sort of to me has even on the Saturday morning cartoon they used to have an Aquaman on the Justice League, right? And he was kind of cool, but what can a dolphin and a whale do on most days when you're fighting, arch villains and stuff? But
hey, 2/3 of the earth, man, 2/3 of the earth.
Yeah, but still, I mean, Really, it's a stretch, like.
Yeah, there's been a lot of things over the years that have sort of taken the piss out of Aquaman. Although I will say, as a longtime comic reader, there have been some really excellent takes in the comics where he is, he's just an absolutely formidable force and really, really cool and done as a really seriously interesting character. And I love that in order to obviously help diversify the Justice League, they cast Jason to be the Aquaman in the DC.
As opposed to a blonde-haired guy, yeah.
I mean, I rarely, if at all, have any issues with them diversifying long established characters, because I think obviously these were characters created 75 years ago by white people working for white people. It's time to get with the times. I think that was a ripe for a changeover character, and I think he's killed it as that character. So that's a good one. But yeah, it's funny because this show seems like it's leaning into the joke, right? Whereas they've really tried to sort of rehab Aquaman by casting Jason Momoa, and now they're sort of leaning back into the joke. It's kind of a weird sort of simultaneous expression of their feelings about the character.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll end up watching it. I do like seeing where they're going with this. It's like continue to subscribe to HBO Max. It's effectively free for I might as well. And I also find it kind of interesting that this style of art design, this kind of organic, round, kind of loose style, I'm seeing a trend. So if you look at the Tuca and Birdie, which was on Netflix, now on Adult Swim, Cartoon Network. If you look at that style, if you look at the interstitial animations for Awkwafina as Nora from Queens, it also uses that same kind of I don't know what to call it. I'm not, Tim, this is probably your area with the BFA, right? Like there probably is a name for this art, but I can see the pattern between the through line between those.
Yeah, well, I think like I only watched like the first 10 seconds of the clip, and immediately I got like I said. SpongeBob SquarePants meets Dr. Seuss kind of thing, like that sort of. It's a I don't know if it's comic book style, but it's a cartoon style, like where got the key lines and the filled in colors. So it's typical of like Simpsons or Family Guy kind of style illustration, but obviously with the the bubbles and the underwater stuff, and that's the immediate impression I got of it. I have to wait and see. It did seem a little bubblegumish to me. Mm-hmm. I don't know, like, the question to John, when John asked would I watch it, I don't know. I'd have to maybe watch an episode or two and see if it really works for me, right? So same with Prodigy. I think, that's another one that's going to be interesting depending on the target. I mean, the target we talked about is kids, right? For Prodigy, is this targeting young children as well, right? Like, what's the...
Yeah, but then you can make that case. We talked about it previously. You could make that case for Clone Wars, but I loved Clone Wars. You can make that case for Rebels, and I love Rebels. Yeah. So
yeah. No, I'm not saying that anything wrong with the style of thing. It's not Rick and Morty,
no,
right? But I mean, like, is it like the Marvel movies are not? I mean, yeah, a lot of kids watch the Marvel movies, right? But I don't know if I would necessarily say a Marvel movie is for a young kid, right? You have young cousins who watch the Marvel movies, and yet, like when did Xavier get to watch, or Foster get to watch those?
Well, so far my youngest Foster has. I think he's watched 2 of the 20 plus. He watched the Guardians movies, and he seemed to enjoy them, but he really hasn't expressed a lot of interest in. Mind you, I don't think he's seen most of the Star Wars movies either. It's not for a lack of liking. He's just like, I got better things to do with my time than watch movies. Whereas my older son, I think it's probably been about 5 or 6 years, so he's probably like 12, I think, when I started letting him watch the Marvel movies. 12, 13, which I think was probably fine. Like, I don't feel like he was in over his depth or anything.
Yeah, whereas like when I was raised, my parents had no clue, so I pretty much could see just about anything I wanted, really.
Oh, same. My mom used to drop me with a a tin of Coke and a baggie full of popcorn at the afternoon matinee. She said, you have two choices. You can go watch a movie, I don't care which one, or you can come with me to the fabric store and do some shopping. And so I watched movies like every weekend for my entire childhood, and I loved it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Babysat by Bruce Willis. What can I say?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's how I saw things in the theaters, like, some of the Star Trek movies and Goonies and, I mean, you name a movie from the early mid 80s on to the, to the late 80s. I saw a lot of it in the theater.
Yeah. Yeah. By the way, I spoke to a friend of ours on recently, and he said, I don't know how you guys on Spotcast have time to watch all these things. And I said, I don't really know either, but
yeah, well, we're gonna have to send a letter to Paramount if they make a 6th Star Trek show. I'm not sure we have time for that, but we're managing so far. And it would be a lot easier if we owned ourselves a copy of Amazing Fantasy 15, because the debut issue where we meet the Amazing Spider-Man is now the world's most expensive comic book. So I found this personally as a comic book fan, reader, and collector. I found this absolutely fascinating because for the longest time, there has been this sort of 1A, 1B fight over what's the most valuable comic book in the world between Action Comics #1, which is from 1938's first appearance of Superman, and Detective Comics #27, and that is the first appearance of Batman. And those two things have sort of gone back and forth over the years as the most valuable comics, starting off with, oh my God, I can't believe that comic book is worth 50,000, 100,000, 200,000, 400,000, a million, $1,000,005. Well, guess what, kids? If you want to buy the almost pristine copy of Amazing Fantasy, it's the nicest known copy in existence. It's a 9.6 out of 10 rated by the CGC, the comics grading company. If you want to get your hands on that, you can get it. And it just sold and made the highest sale price for any comic book ever at $3.6 million.
Wow.
Yeah. That is nothing to sneeze at. So that has blown Detective Comics 27, which was the previously high selling price for a book, at $1.5 million. And there was a copy of Marvel Comics #1 from 1939. That's the first original Human Torch. Obviously, the very first Marvel, quote unquote, Marvel Comics, although it was not actually Marvel Comics, the company. It was Marvel Comics, the book. Sold for $1.26 million in 2019. But yeah, this is unbelievable how much this book has gone for. And I mean, first of all, I can't believe that there is a copy of this book from 1963 in this condition. It's shocking. But to go from 12 cents to $3.6 million is not a bad little nest egg.
A little profit, yeah.
Yeah. So all I'm saying is, if you live in an old house, maybe think about ripping the walls out. See if you can find a copy. You might be sitting on an
but if it's sitting in the walls, it's not going to be this quality.
It won't be that quality. It's true. There was a story from a few years back about somebody who did that, who was renovating an old house and basically pulled out a stack of books. They weren't in great condition, but I think they still ended up paying for $50,000 worth of renovations for their house because somebody had stuffed comic books as insulation in their walls.
Wow.
You could be sitting on a gold mine.
Like all those Mickey Mantle cards that were used in the baseball. It's not the bicycle spokes.
The bicycles, yeah. Yeah, breaks your heart. We used to do that with Wayne Gretzky rookie cards, so I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, Bobby Orr.
Yeah.
Ken Dryden.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if I would have put Bobby Orr or Ken Dryden on my bike, but I would have put some of the lesser known guys. The journeyman hockey players, they would end up on my bike for sure. Yeah. Who knew? Well, you know what it is people like me who grew up trading hockey cards in the playground at school are the ones who are now paying $3.6 million for a comic book at this grade, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean,
you got bit by the bug. There's something in the gum that they used to put in the hockey cards, right?
Yeah,
it affects your brain, makes your brain go rotten.
We have a new Disney Plus movie that's coming, which is a remake of the 1980s Flight of the Navigator, coming to Disney Plus. That's I actually haven't seen that one in years. I wonder if it still holds up. I mean, it's practical effects, so probably mostly does. But a kid who finds a a spaceship with an AI on it, and they go on adventures. It's a fun one.
But I think I saw this one within the last 10 years. I never saw it when it was first out, but I did watch it recently, and I didn't think it was that bad. And it's kind of like, if you think about it from the parents' point of view, like their kid disappears for like 10 years or something, right? And comes back as this young kid, right? Isn't that true?
I forgot that fact. So that's what happens, huh? Like,
Yeah.
I mostly remember them flying around, and then the guy's like, the little kid's like, I got to take a leak. He's like, what do you mean? He's like, well, I got to take a leak. And then they're underwater at some point. He's like, I don't leak, you leak. So it's good fun in my head, and I'm hoping it holds up if I watch it.
Yeah. What do you think, John? You've seen this movie.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's easy to see how this one makes sense as a remake, just because it is a sort of a timeless concept. And the same way we talked about Last Starfighter being remade at one point, the idea of a kid who plays a video game and then gets drafted into the, space cadets makes perfect sense. And Flight of the Navigator, same thing, kid sort of forms bond with spacecraft, has adventures, seems like an absolutely perfect thing to redo. And
you mean he's not kidnapped by this alien creature and taken to another planet and probed and then returned 10 years later?
Well, apparently he's pickled for that period of time, according to the plot of the movie. But yeah, I also thought it was interesting. This movie, I think it said Bryce Dallas Howard's going to be the director for this too. Of course, she's Ron Howard's daughter, so she probably knows
famous for doing an episode of The Mandalorian.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, she's clearly she's learned a thing or two working with her very talented director dad, and also again, she's a pretty prominent actor. She was a co-star of the Jurassic Park trilogy. So yeah, she's got quite the career going. It's good for her.
Yeah, cool. All right, well, we're at that part of the show where we talk about Star Trek Lower Decks this time. We're talking about Season 2, Episode 16, The Spy Humongous.
The Spy Humongous?
Humongous? Yes, Humongous. Yeah, so it starts off with Captain's Log 58105.1. I don't know if that has any significance, but that sounds like quite a ways in the future, right? And talking about doing a Captain Freeman and is heading down with Shax to do try to convince the Pac-led people that they should have a ceasefire, since they've been wreaking havoc throughout the galaxy for the last year or so. And the Pac-led called their homeworld Pac-led Planet. Yeah, so it would be a huge achievement for her to have to negotiate this ceasefire. And Shax says, "Yeah, you're doing Picard level work here. That they might give you an Enterprise." And she's like, "I don't think so. That's asking too much." But she, and famous last words as they're beaming down, she says, "It's just the Pac-leds. It can't be that complicated, right?" Which is dun dun dun.
Yeah, the best thing you want to say at the beginning of a Star Trek episode.
Yeah, it can't be that bad. How bad can it be? So she gets down there, and immediately they welcome Captain Janeway, and like, no, I'm Captain Freeman, and she says to the person who greets her, I'm here to see if you guys would be interested in doing a ceasefire. And he says, I don't have a big enough helmet to make this decision for make ceasefires. And so somebody runs out from the big citadel and yells, "Hey, yeah, prisoner Rumdar has escaped to her ship." And of course now the Pac-led are all upset at Captain Janeway, and they decide that, well, if he can't come, if he can't return, then we'll keep her here. Meanwhile, she communicates to Ransom and says, there doesn't happen to be a Pac-led on the ship? And Kayshawn is the name of the other guy, right?
Yep.
Okay, I didn't catch his name at the beginning, but I just added it in here. But they affirm that, in fact, there is this Pac-led, so they're given the task of running around and getting her. And then, of course, Janeway stays here, and then that's the beginning, the end of the cold opening, and we roll to the titles and the title sequence. Meanwhile, we start off obviously in the mess hall, where the lower deck crew find out that they're assigned a new duty, and that's just a great way to start the day. And they're going to be doing anomaly consolidation duty, or ACD as they like to call it. Tendy's kind of excited about it, and Boimler's kind of excited about it, and Mariner's like, "No way, man! This is just like collecting the trash that the
space trash,
the senior officers space trash on the get from their discarded projects and stuff like that." And Rutherford points out that this is dangerous space trash that can't just be simply recycled and recombined into other things, right? So And Tendy's like, well, maybe it'll be fun, like his typical Tendy kind of sounds, right? But as Boimler gets up from the table, he trips and his porridge ends up pouring all over his head. And of course, Tendy busts a gut laughing at him because he looked so funny and that kind of stuff. So that's going to come back later to haunt Boimler. And as he's walking across the cafeteria, he sees another series of lower deck type people headed by Ensign Casey, who calls him over and says, hey, he wants him to come and join the red shirts, they're calling themselves, which is, of course, humorous because we all know the red shirts don't really survive. And they're impressed by the fact that he worked on the Titan, worked with Riker, so they're thinking if you can trade some Riker secrets to us, we'll teach you how to be a officer material. So they all want to be captains and stuff like that. And you're a legend. You can help us level up our skill, kind of thing. They tell him, and Casey tells him there's an acting captain's duty coming up, and when first time I watched it, he said, and Boimler says, "But I have ACD," and I thought he meant like ADD,
or OCD.
Yeah, OCD. Yeah, well, ADD, attention deficit syndrome.
Yeah.
Anyway. But yeah, I know. And then as they're, we'll teach you how to carry yourself off as a leader. And as they're walking away, Casey says, "Excelsior." Isn't that what Stan Lee used to say?
That's right. That's straight from Stan's playbook. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So, and of course, Mariner's looking across. He got a big furrow on her face. She's just like, cozying up to those guys, those red shirts, to get out of trash duty. That's such a great idea, she says. Which is, typical of lower decks. They always turn around what you think is going to be a disaster, they think is great, kind of thing. And so, meanwhile, Ransom and Kayshawn are walking with Ramdar, the Pakled, who's escaped the ship, and asking him what kind of a mess did you get yourself into that you're asking for asylum, and he says, "I want to see how your shields work." And of course, Kayshawn and Ransom look at each other and kind of, take a private moment to sort of say, And Kayshawn says, "Are you getting the Basminti when he pulled back the veil vibes?" I don't get the reference, but I'm sure it means something to somebody. But yeah, sort of, yeah, they agree. Yeah, maybe he's here as a spy. Of course, they communicate to Captain Janeway down on the planet that's the case, and she says, "Well, do you think it's a challenge? He's going to get away with something?" And Ransom says, "I don't think it'll be that much of a problem. He just took a picture of his own foot, So
they really are excellent foils for this season. Like the Pakleds are the perfect enemy for a lower decks season.
Yeah, because they're just comical, right?
They're just the worst. They're just the worst, and I love how hyper up they're playing all the weird Pakledness of them.
Yeah, for sure. So anyway, we flash back to the lower decks crew who come across Ransom's quarters, and they're like, "Oh, Ransom has some unlabeled crystals," and so they start picking up the crystals very carefully. And then Tendi picks up one and picks up a skull. It's in a sort of container tube, and ends up dropping it. And Rutherford says, "Be careful! That's over the planet where all the things evolved weird." And as soon as it hits the ground, it affects Rutherford, and he starts to balloon up into this big balloon guy, and they're trying to figure out what to do, and Mariner's riding him on the back and that kind of stuff as he's bouncing around the room, and she yells at Tendi, "Smear the red stuff under his nose," and they do that, and of course that, like a smelling salt, kind of reverses the effect, and Rutherford shrinks down to normal, and then Tendi says, "You just experienced full molecular engorgement in a matter of seconds. Did it feel amazing?"
She really can turn anything into a moment of sunshine.
Yeah, for sure, right? Anyway, so then you see the red shirts walking with Boimler, and they're like, Casey says, "Well, so how many times did Riker clean his trombone?" And
which sounds like the best metaphor I've ever heard, by the way. The best euphemism for...
Well, the trombone comes up a little bit later, too. So, because he does say as he's walking away, "I really learn how to blow some brass." But,
which might be the dirtiest line so far in Lower Decks.
Yeah, I think so. And, but, of course, Boimler says, "Yeah, he did it all the time. It was really distracting," right? Or disruptive, I guess, right? Anyway, Ransom's taking Ramdar. They take him to the secret gift shop and get him a T-shirt, and they offer to take him to the secret juice bar, and says, "No, I want to see the warp core." And then they're talking to Captain Janeway on the planet again, and as they turn around, they take a moment to themselves to sort of talk about how they can fool him, and of course they turn back and he's gone, he's disappeared, which is a typical trope in these kind of things. And they're like, "Where did he go?" And they're running around trying to figure out where he's gone. Meanwhile, the lower deck continue to find all kinds of anomalies and just little vignettes where Mariner tends to get, like, whenever Rutherford or Tendi exposes some, harmful thing, Mariner always gets the worst of it, like the flowers that spray in her face from the Vulcan, where the ones that make Spock fall in love with the character in that in the movie.
Yep.
And big red gloms to the roof of the ship. Back on planet Pakled, Janeway is offered some rotten mushroot, and she turns it down, and they're all upset. She turned down the mushroot. Meanwhile, the queen of Pakled, the Pakled queen, shows up, and she says, "You can't kill Ramdar. We're going to kill Ramdar." And no one's killing Ramdar. He's perfectly fine. And he's in the bathroom, and he says, "I want to speak to him right away." Well, he's in the bathroom, and he says, "You should negotiate a ceasefire." "Oh, I don't have a big enough helmet for that," she says, And I wonder if Riker has a big helmet. Anyway, I'm going to let that one sit for a minute.
Thank you very much.
His big pants.
Don't forget to tip your waitress.
I'll be here all week. Try the veal. Boimler, you need to look like a leader. The red shirts are telling him, and they talk about his uniform and how the uniform is wearing you. You're not wearing the uniform, right? So then the line comes up, did Riker modify his uniform? And Boimler says, "Well, yeah, they did have to make his pants bigger for the trombone. I mean, for his legs."
Because, he's tall.
Yeah, because he's tall. Exactly. Yeah. And then, they're talking about his hair and how there's something wrong with his hair. And it's Jen, the Andorian, who's talking to him, right? And she says, "Would you follow that hair into battle?" And, well, no, I guess I wouldn't, right? So they take him in back, and they pad his uniform, and they give him the short sideburns, side cut of his hair, and he looks like real svelte looking guy, and he's all puffed up, and
they stick the shoulder pads into his uniform.
Yeah, exactly. They pad his uniform. Yeah. No, he's talking to he's met Tendi and the lower deck crew coming out of one of the quarters, and with his new hair and all that kind of stuff, and he runs off, says, "Gotta go, and I'll talk to you guys later. I'll catch up with you later about your fabulous ACD that you're doing." And then
you missed out on Boimler's speech. They make him give the speech.
Tendi says at one point, they flash back to Tendi, and she's like, "How often do we get to experience these things? This is great." And she's really apologetic to Rutherford and Mariner, who are not having a great day.
Yeah, and the Mariner bitches her out.
The red shirts, convince Boimler to do a rousing speech for his crew, and he gives a sort of weak sort of Boimler type speech. They pump him up and tell him how to do it, and talking about how the bridge isn't where you go to sit, the bridge follows you around. And so he gives this really inspiring speech and impresses them all, right? So anyway, so Tendi's annoyed at the other two for not looking at the bright side of this activity of getting the anomaly collection duty. So she says, "Okay, I'll do it myself." And so Mariner, like Rutherford, like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." And they sit down and they relax, right? So, meanwhile, in the room, Tendi picks up a broken sword and a bunch of other things. She finds a storybook with it says 3 little pigs on it, and she opens it up, and these 3 giant pigs jump out of the book and manifest and start running around, and she's trying to coerce them back in, and she ends up going back out into the hallway and knocks over a tube, and this gelatinous blob pops out and turns into this big giant slug creature, which then eats her, and she's screaming, and Mariner's saying, "Try not to get digested," while they're trying to figure out how to get which hyper spray to attack the monster with, and eventually the gelatinous blob poofs Tendi out the back end of him, and she's covered in feces, for lack of a better word.
Yep.
And she's not very happy now. She's discovered that ACD is the worst activity on the planet, on the ship, right?
With one of the great lines from Mariner: "Who among us has not been pooped out of a giant
by an alien creature?" Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So the King Pakled shows up on the planet, and Captain Janeway's like, "Oh, great, I'll go talk to him." And And then the Emperor shows up, and he's got an even bigger helmet. And, she's thinking, okay, I'll go talk to these guys. And as she's just about to make her opening speech to these gentlemen, or these two, the King and the Queen, or the Emperor and the Queen. So the King of the Packlets comes out, and then the Emperor comes out. Yep. Did I not say that?
Yeah.
Okay. So as she's about to make her speech to the King and the Queen, a rebellion breaks out, and a bunch of Packlets come and attack, and they stab the Emperor in the back, and the one Packlet grabs his helmet and holds it up in the air and says, now they'll never be able, the big helmets will never be able to, rule us. And then of course he realizes, oh, I've got the big helmet, puts it on himself and says, now I'm the leader of the planet, kind of thing, right? So he's the big leader, and behold my giant helmet. A lot of big helmets.
And they all drop to a knee because of course they do.
Yeah, exactly, because they're Packlets, right? Anyway, so the red shirts are now still coaching, walking through the hallways, being real suave and debonair, and they're telling Boimler, you have to live like a captain now, and he's like, but those are my friends over there. He points to the lower deck people, and he goes, those people, they're always up to their elbow in some type of slime, and we work in Starfleet, they work for Starfleet, right? And he's like, but they're my friends. He goes, this isn't a friendship. This is a starship. Are you a star? And anyway, so Tandy is a little annoyed, and she's now starting to see the negative side of this activity, and she picks up this cube, and she's her attitude is starting to shift, and she can't figure out why. But as she's getting more and more angry, she starts turning into this giant green scorpion creature, and starts thrashing around the ship and smashing things. She breaks into and she's in lower deck sucks, and the ship sucks, and she's got a really bad mood. And she turns into this green scorpion creature and attacks the mess hall. And and Brad Boimler says, we got to do something here. Like, we got to, and they also, the red shirts all run into the mess hall and start giving these, captain speeches, right?
Yeah.
Speaking in platitudes.
Simultaneously, of course.
Yeah. And of course, and all the crew are looking at them like with big smiles on their face. And Brad Boimler says, aren't you actually going to do something? And so he runs in, and he meets up with the Rutherford Mariner, and he says, did she touch an orb? No, it was a cube, and which is a great, geometry joke. But anyway, so he goes, oh, it was a Ataxian mood shifter. I know what to do. So he runs over to the replicator and starts ordering food, like beans to throw on his head and get Tandy to laugh. And so he keeps trying this different kinds of food and things like that, and eventually, she's still thrashing around, and eventually he just ends up like getting the replicator to fire like all kinds of food at him, and at which point Tandy starts to laugh, and the laughter changes her mood, and she turns back into her regular self, right?
Laughter's the best medicine.
Laughter, I guess. And thanks for saving me, she says, right? So, and then meanwhile, we missed the part. Oh yeah, so Ransom and Kayshawn are still looking for Rumdar. They can't find him anywhere. And meanwhile, they got knocked over by the big giant scorpion at one point too. So they get up and they're like, oh, we never should have underestimated Rumdar. And then they happen to look out the window, and Kayshawn says, Shanka? And then they realize that they see Rumdar free floating outside the ship, frozen, right? Anyway, so they bring him back in the ship, and the doctor's like, can't believe he survived being frozen. And he explains to them he thought that he was in a bathroom, and he went to flush. He ended up, getting ejected out this little window. And of course, Ramson says, "Are you sure you weren't in an airlock?" So yeah. And he says, "Well, can I have the codes now?" Right. So meanwhile, they decide to get rid of Rumdar, so they beam him back down to the planet, and so he beams into the middle of the room where Captain Janeway / Freeman are talking to the Packleds, and then the new Emperor guy, whatever he's calling himself, yes, we tricked you, Janeway. Rumdar was a spy. Ha ha ha. And she says, "Well, what did you discover when you were on the ship?" He goes, well, "She's not Janeway. She's Captain Freeman." And they're like, "What? She's Captain Freeman?" And she says, "I've been trying to tell you that this whole time, right?" Anyway, and then she says, "You were an amazing spy. I totally didn't even get that. Like, what information did you were you keeping from us so I can see how just amazing you were? He goes, I didn't tell you anything about the big plan to smuggle a Verusian bomb onto Earth. And at which point, the two of them have had enough. And so Shax and Janeway beam back up to the ship. And then, of course, the Emperor goes, wait, you just beat Janeway. And they all cheer, right? So Tendy's now sorry that she sorry to the crew that she requested the ACD, and I'm sorry I requested the ACD. I went all Scorpion on you, she says. Meanwhile, Ransom and the other guys are talking, and Boimler's like, I've had enough of you guys. And Ransom walks by, and Casey says, hey, can I'd like to apply for the acting captain's duty. And Ransom's like, yeah, whatever, I don't care, you can do it. And then but as he's walking by Boimler, he says, really good job, Boimler, quick thinking in the mess hall, you showed real leadership, which is the moral of this episode, I think, right? And then one of the red shirt ladies says to him, do you want to catch a Winger Bingsum show sometime? And I don't know if you guys remember, but he had a one-man show called the United Federation of Characters last season.
Yeah. Yes.
Anyway, so the bridge crew are on the ship, and up on the bridge crew are on the bridge, and they decide to go have a drink and relax after this harrowing day they had, and that leaves Casey by himself, and he's got his eye on the captain's chair, and he goes, sits down, and as soon as he sits down, Shax walks in, okay, next shift is here, get out of my chair, and kicks him out of the chair, and go clean up airlock 17, the pack lid did something unspeakable in there. And so anyway, so we're back in the lower decks quarters, and they're talking about their adventures of the day. And Mariner says, "Well, we got nothing out of that whole exercise." And Mariner says, "Well, we got this." And she holds up a submanifold casting stone, and Boimler recognizes it right away. And we can beam our voices to another planet, kind of thing. And won't that be fun? And Tendi says, "What are we going to do? Prank call Armus?" The guy who killed Tashi Yar.
The skin of evil.
The skin of evil, yes. And so, so of course, next thing you know, they're like, hey, Armus, and he's like, I wish I had someone to torture. And he's like, who is that? Show yourself. And then Boimler says, come find us. We're touching your stuff. And that's where we end the episode.
Yeah.
With Armus.
Yeah, nice call.
There wasn't a lot of, I don't know, was there a lot of Easter eggs kind of stuff? Other than the obvious stuff, like calling her Janeway, and like some of the things that they find, like did they throw back to anything? Like, because it didn't seem like this was a real sort of deep episode to me, right? It was funny with the Packlet stuff, but
yeah, I didn't really get a lot of Easter eggs out of it, although I'm sure they snuck a few in there. But some of the lines were terrific. The who among us has not been pooped up by a giant alien was funny. Yeah. The line Starfleet, this is Starfleet, slime is a given, was also, I thought, a really, really great one. And when Boimler was trying to find the ways to make Tendi laugh, I was writing down the things that he was doing. So first he does the bowl of beans, and then he does the cake, and then he lights himself on fire with it. So I just wrote down beans, cake, and agony, which sounds a little bit like a 1990s R&B band or something. Beans, cake, and agony, like Bone Thugs and Harmony or something.
Right.
There was there's lots of funny stuff. Again, the whole sort of, the Riker jokes. I'd like to rescind my previous statement. The dirtiest line in Star Trek is no longer the first one. It's look at my giant helmet. That might be the dirtiest line ever uttered. Behold my giant helmet, I think was the line. Behold my giant helmet. Sounds like a line from a bad adult film or something.
Yeah, did you order a pizza? Yeah,
exactly. But yeah, I think this one was really just one of those great sort of, comedy of error, sort of slapsticky kind of things that just worked on a really great level. Like it didn't go too far. The skin of evil thing, though, I mean, that was a pretty that was a good callback. It wasn't a deep cut, but it was certainly a cut. It was to the point where, again, number one fan and I were watching it together, and he was like, "Sorry, the what now?" I was like, "Okay, there we go."
Well, even the flower that sprays Mariner, right? That's one. That was one, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I'm sure some of those, if you go back and watch that sequence again, there was probably a few of those sort of, crystal-y kind of things and that have come up in the past, right?
Yeah, so. I wouldn't be surprised that, like, I didn't have the usual amount of time that I do to sort of do the episode watch and slow and, everything out. I bet you that if you paused a few times on the anomaly gathering, that there was probably a few little Easter eggs in there. I'm sure there'll be some great recaps over the next few days. There's a few great. Well,
there was the line from Kayshawn, and I wasn't sure if he, like, I forgot the bracelet he is, but they have that sort of Jagdar and whatever.
Oh, Janad and Tanagra or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
And Jalad at Tanagra.
At Tanagra, yeah. And he says when he says, did you get the Basmati opens the veil kind of line? I'm not sure. I googled that, but I didn't come up with anything significant from that name, right?
Yeah, I think in a lot of circumstances, it's just supposed to be, you're supposed to work your own context in there, right?
Yeah. Yeah, well, it sounds like something that his race would say, just sort of like,
Yeah. It really is it is a fun thing that they've included that race in the season, because it really is the joke that just never fails. Every time they do it, it's funny.
Yeah. Yeah, and like you said, the pack letter are perfect foil for the lower deck crew, because their incompetence makes the lower deck Cerritos look competent, right?
Yeah.
Like they always take care of the second contact stuff, right? They're never really the first ship in; they're the second one in, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's why Captain Freeman should have really, thought about it. It was like, wait a minute, so how come we're getting to do the ceasefire and it's not the Titan? And I feel like Starfleet Command was like, this doesn't sound legit. Let's send the Cerritos instead.
Yeah, right. Yeah, how bad could it be, right? Yeah, exactly. Cool.
So, did everybody watch What If this week?
Everybody watched What If this week, as far as I know. Well, I don't know if Jaime watched it. I watched it.
Oh yeah, I watched it.
Oh yes, throw him
so
we
to had the floor. Throw him to the floor. We had What If Killmonger had saved Tony Stark, which is a funny thing because it was way more Killmonger than it was Tony Stark. Although I suppose it was Tony Stark, but I mean I thought it was a cool episode in that it was a little more grounded and not it was certainly dark, but it wasn't as dark as the last few. Although it's funny that there's been this run, like it seemed like the first two episodes were sort of lighter, and then we've just been on a lot of like things went wrong and it really got really bad. So this one, he saves Tony from the incident that would have turned him into Iron Man, and then we have this sort of whole storyline of him sort of playing both sides against the other between Wakanda and the Americans, and sort of starts this sort of big war between them, and ends up sort of positioning himself as in the end the new Black Panther. I enjoyed getting a little more time with Michael B. Jordan's Eric Killmonger, but I don't know. It all seemed pretty convoluted. Like it wasn't the greatest, I think, story that they've told, and I still couldn't get my head around the guy who does the voice for Tony. He just does not sound like Robert Downey Jr. enough for my taste.
Really? Okay. Yeah. I was okay with him, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was interesting because, I mean, did Michael B. Jordan didn't play Killmonger in the movie, did he?
Yeah.
Oh, he did.
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so the background of that character is he's related to Black Panther, but he's like his
first cousin. So
cousin,
the king's
right, yeah.
brother was his father.
Right. Yeah, but he was raised like a sort of a hoodlum in America, right?
Yeah, he grew up in Oakland while T'Challa was raised in Wakanda.
Yeah, Wakanda. Yeah, exactly. And sort of like there was times when he was kind of playing, like you said, playing both sides against the middle. But yeah, I guess that was the sort of deal, because he was like, it seemed like he was on the side of good at the beginning, and then as time wore on, he got caught being the bad guy a few times, right? Like I think Pepper Potts caught him being the bad guy at one point, right? Because she had the film of him killing Tony Stark, right?
Well, no, because Tony is the one that catches him killing Rhodey, right?
Oh, right. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and then he ends up killing Tony, and it's funny because the Watcher comes out, and Jeffrey Wright's amazing voice comes out and sort of says, one moment changes everything. It's an opportunity for a villain to become a hero, and so Killmonger saves Tony, and you're like, oh, so instead of going down this dark path, he's going to go down a light path, and things will turn out differently. But he kind of still ends up being a monster, and he ends up, killing Tony, killing T'Challa, sort of, instigating this war and becoming the new Black Panther. It doesn't redeem the character at all, which is funny because in some of these, they sort of set out to sort of find, again, even between the Thanos isn't an all bad guy and joins, Star Panther's crew and everything. This one, it's just like, the moral of the story is once an ass, always an ass. Like it's weird.
Yeah. And it's interesting I see where you're going with the voice here, because the top cast are all the way down to Andy Serkis, Don Cheadle, Paul Bettany, and then we get to sort of fill in people like Pepper Potts wasn't really the right voice. Tony Stark wasn't the right voice.
Shuri. They got Angela Bassett though, so yeah. How about that?
What about that? Yeah, exactly.
And they made her this like incredible badass, which she is. Yeah. So sure,
general.
Yeah, that was actually kind of a cool twist. But if there's a plan in the new Black Panther movie to make her like a badass warrior queen, I am down. She's awesome. I love her. I don't know. It's a strange thing, and I honestly felt about this one like when we got the Star Panther episode in episode 2, I think we were all like pleasantly surprised that we got Chadwick Boseman doing the voice of T'Challa, and it was this sort of beautiful sort of end to him being the character. But he's come back twice since then. He's played Black Panther in last week's episode as well. He played it in the zombies one. He came back and became the legless Black Panther, and then he was back again in this one. But he got like what, 5 lines, 6 lines?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
It's like kind of taken the wind out of the sails of the beautiful farewell for Chadwick, but I guess
he didn't know it was a farewell at the time when they wrote this, right?
I guess not, but yeah, it's just kind of a weird, like, he basically shows up, is really badass, gets killed, and then he has the Killmonger has the vision of the Panthers and speaks to him one more time, and basically, T'Challa sort of says, don't worry, you'll get yours. Jaime, yes, thumbs up, thumbs down?
I went into it thinking that it might be kind of standalone. And then I said, well, this might be the opportunity to think about what they might do for the next Black Panther movie where, they're not going to have much of Chadwick Boseman, if anything. I'm not sure what they're going to do there. And they focus on Shuri quite a bit towards the end of this one. I'm like, oh, I wonder if this gives a hint of how they'll handle the transition over to somebody taking on the mantle, and Shuri seems like a likely candidate.
Yeah. Too bad Letitia Wright didn't do the voice though. Although I thought the woman that did her voice was decent, like pretty close, but still.
Well, she plays a younger character though in the story, right?
Yeah, not a lot though.
There's only 3 more episodes of this show left.
Yeah, this
season.
Yeah,
I mean, they got lined up for season 2 apparently, but.
Yeah, I wonder if we're going to see. I mean, we got that sort of teaser trailer that sort of showed the second half of the season. We know a little bit about some of the episodes we're going to see there. It does seem to be one where, it seems like there's a crossover at some point in some way happening, because it looks like some of these characters are interacting with one another. I don't know. Again, I still keep waiting for these one-offs to pay off, but maybe they're just going to do, 6 or 7 ones that establish the characters, and then they'll find a way to sort of cross them over into one big story or something. But I keep waiting for this to sort of come together beyond what if, but it hasn't yet. 6 weeks in, we're still waiting.
Yep.
And yet I'll tune in next week.
Yeah, according to this, this was definitely his last project before he died. Oh, it says here that several actors from the mainstream MCU will not be returning their voices in this series, like Robert Downey Jr., Tom Holland, Chris Evans, Scarlett Johansson, Elizabeth Olsen, Dave Bautista, Zoe Saldana, James Spader, Letitia Wright, Gwyneth Paltrow, and Brie Larson. Most of these actors have since long departed from the MCU, and their contract with Marvel expired.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I'm sure that when somebody called their agent and said, "Hey, do you want to come in and do an episode of this?" They were like, "Sure." Cut us a check for what, like $8 million, which they could have done, but if they think they can do it credibly otherwise, you know, I do like the authenticity of some of the voices, because some of the voices really are distinctive, but I get it. They could have just gone scorched earth and just said, like, everybody's done by a different actor. That's certainly what happened with, you know, Clone Wars and all those other ones, right? They did.
That would have made it a little bit more palpable, you know?
Yeah.
Because, like, when you're looking at the Pepper Potts character and you're like, is that really? I don't know. You know, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, some of them are a little more obvious than others. Some of them you're like, oh, they didn't even come close. But some of them are better than others, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Alrighty, well, let's get to the watch list. Just a couple of things here. Jaime, you got one here?
Yeah, mine is one for, you know, there are adults that do this too, but you can also involve the kiddos. So you have your official Star Trek Lower Decks Season 2 coloring book. It's a PDF. You can print it out as many times as you want, or the specific pages you want. Trying to look to see what I would do. You know, they've got the scene from Boimler on the Titan. You got Kayshawn coming in and it being introduced. You see the senior staff. You got Kayshawn again, but this time as the puppet or the doll. You've got the Lower Deckers main crew, and I don't know, maybe the Mugatos. Was it Gumato? Was that the one that McCoy would say?
I may do them all.
Oh my gosh, I don't even know how many different ways I did, but you can see those gorilla guys along with Boimler and Rutherford as a handy scene. So
I don't want to put too much work on you, Jaime, but I would love it if you would draw me a Mugatu Gumato Mugutu for
there's one in
Christmas
the coloring book.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If you color one in for me for Christmas.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Or how about the? By the way, this is free. By the way, I forgot to mention.
Oh
that.
yeah. Sorry, it's a free PDF download.
Yes, because I just downloaded it as you. I clicked on the link here to get it. Yeah. Or Boimler on the Titan. Did they have like a lower deck? Oh, this is season 2. So is there a season 1 comic book? I wonder.
Maybe I didn't do enough looking into it to figure out.
It says Star Trek Day coloring pages on the tin here. I wonder if there's other series for this. I'll have to go back and check it out.
Possibly from the previous year, right?
Yeah. So Jonathan and I are on a tug of war as to who's going to pick Y the Last Man as our watch list item. But
I think you pick it, and I'll just weigh in on it.
All right. Well, then I'm picking it. I watched the first 3 episodes, and it was quite compelling enough that I would want to watch the rest of them. I do want to point out too that there's a really amazing actor in this. Here's an angle I hadn't thought about. Okay, so the plot, without giving away too many secrets, is that all males, and presumably animal males as well, all
everything
die,
on
expire.
Earth with a Y chromosome, right?
Except for
Yorick and Ampersand.
Yorick and his monkey, right? Yeah. And I'm just going to look this up here. Y the Last Man. Here we go. Because there's an amazing actor who's in it, who was also in, because here's the angle that I hadn't thought about, and you meet this character, I think maybe, you see him in the first episode, but I think he gets fleshed out a bit more in the second episode. The daughter, Hero, she runs with a bunch of friends of hers who are trans men, right? Mm-hmm. So technically they don't have Y chromosomes, right?
Yeah, these are people who were born women but identify as men.
And with a bit of spoilerishness, it's not much of a spoiler, but in the second episode, you see, you as the camera pans into the room where they walk into, there's a whole series, like whole table full of vials of testosterone that these guys have been collecting, right? Because obviously they need it, and that becomes a plot point. But I hadn't thought about that angle. That's a really interesting, play on women who have transitioned and now are male, for all intents and purposes. In this particular scenario, like you don't normally, you get it now because it's like 2022, but in the 70s and 80s and 90s, you never would have got that sort of angle, right? But the actor who plays, he's is amazing. He was also in Shameless as sort of an interest or a love interest with one of the gay characters on that show too. But it definitely, it's an actually trans actor too, mm-hmm. right? Which is really well played. I'm just trying to find his name here. Anyway, so that was really cool.
Yep. Did you recognize any of the intersections? The few times I was like, oh, well, that's clearly Toronto, not New York City.
Yeah, there was a few times like when they're sitting outside of the church downtown,
Yep.
right? But they kind of focus it in such a way that you see a building in the background. It's hard not to say whether it's New York or not, right? So was part of it filmed in New York or all of it in Toronto?
I think some of it they might have CGI'd to be New York-esque, but I think all of the street scenes and stuff like that where they're just on the ground, that's all Toronto.
Right.
Yeah, and the other thing that distinguishes it as a clearly Canadian production is that the president in the first episode is Paul Gross.
Yes. Well, he's an executive producer too.
Yeah. For those who do not know him, he's a prominent Canadian actor. He has been in certainly lots of things that he's one of those guys that American people would probably recognize him from. But very famously here, he was on a TV show called Due South for a long time that was very popular.
And Men with Brooms.
That's right. He did a curling movie, which, I mean, really,
Yes.
that is
I mean, you got to check out Men with Brooms.
clearly Canadian. It's actually not a bad movie, all things being equal. Who is it? It's the
That girl from that movie.
The girl from that movie. No, it's the one from your recommendation, Lost in Space, right? It's
Is it Molly Parker?
Molly Parker. You're right. Is Molly Parker?
She's also in Deadwood.
Yes, that's right.
And she's Canadian, right?
She's Canadian, and Leslie Nielsen's in it, also a Canadian. The late Leslie Nielsen. Yep. And the Tragically Hip's in the movie. So, I mean, it's just the most Canadian thing you can come across. And it's about curling.
Yeah.
Although I believe it's set in Alaska or something.
No, it's
set in Canada. Yeah, okay. Anyway, yeah, I only got to watch the first episode. I didn't watch the other two that were on my to-do ASAP, although I ran out of time this week. So whoever was it said to you the other day, how is it you watch all these things? We can't watch everything. We try. I'm going to definitely try and catch up in time for next week's episode 4, but I am curious to see 2 and 3. I'm curious to see where they take it. It was definitely an FX show. It definitely has an FX feel. It feels like Legion. It feels like so many of those FX shows. It's dark, it's edgy, it's bloody, it's the characters are very flawed. There's a lot of sort of familiar sort of FX kind of feel to it. And I guess that fits. Although I always found one of the things I loved about the comic is that the writing is very kind of dark and goes to these really interesting places, but Pia Guerra's art is actually kind of light and bright and doesn't perfectly, in a way it almost does perfectly fit, but it also is this perfect juxtaposition against this dark world. She's drawing in a very sort of like light color palette. The art is very bright. It's not like dark and edgy art. And it was just kind of this beautiful juxtaposition, whereas this show is like dark material shown in a dark way. And it doesn't, to me yet, sort of feel like Y the Last Man. Now, I'm sure the dialogue and things will start to pick up, and I'm sure there will be more elements as you go beyond the first episode of the season, which was pretty darn grim. But it so far didn't click quite as much for me. I'm hoping it grabs me a little more as we keep going.
Right.
But I will definitely give it a fair shot, because I did think there was enough material to grab me. I watched it with Xavier, and I was sort of asking what his impressions were, and he said, it was a little hard to follow. They put too many characters in, which I do agree with. They kind of jam-packed it full of characters, because I think they were trying to sort of give you a little bit of backstory, a little bit of things to hook on to some of the characters. I didn't find that. I felt like the first episode was a little overstuffed with characters, because obviously they're gonna, the story does run on all these different tracks. It's telling the story about Hero, it's telling the story about Yorick, it's telling the story about Agent 355. It's telling the story about their mom, Hero, and Yorick's mom, and then these stories start to converge as the story goes on. I think it'll be really interesting to see how some of these other characters that they've sort of introduced over this course of time, how they start to sort of realize them and fill them out, because it did kind of just sort of feel a little bloated as far as trying to get enough screen time and enough time for us to care about these characters, almost so much that I was like, I don't care about these characters yet.
Right. So Elliot Fletcher is the name of the actor who I couldn't figure out his name for, who's in the first and second or maybe third episode of this show, as well as plays a couple of seasons in Shameless.
See, I knew if I vamped long enough, you'd find it.
Well, it took me a while because, yeah, I'm not 100% sure, so I'm not going to go there. But yeah, there's not enough information here on IMDb.
Did we do a good job selling, Jaime? Are you going to check this out?
Let's see. That's a Hulu property, right? So
in the States, it's Hulu. Yeah.
Yes. Hulu. So I might have to wait until I collect Hulu as one of those things to watch.
Did you set that one back into the wild?
Well, it was originally the plan is like, oh, okay, well, the Orville's going to come up at like a normal, decent time, right? And then the pandemic hit, and it's like, oh, okay, now I'm really unclear since I'm, on HBO Max and Disney Plus and Paramount Plus at the moment. Where am I going to find time and room to watch another show? Well, I can wait. There will be a slow month somewhere, right?
Yeah. No, and I feel that like it is yet another show where it's like I want to see this because I like the character and I like the story, but it is another one in the pile too.
Mm-hmm.
That's a challenge living in this sort of golden age of television now. Like you want to give shows a fair shake. You don't want to just sort of cut them off after a few, but at the same time, if you're going to make the time for it, you got to really want it now. Like there's shows that I really enjoy. Like I still haven't watched a single episode of this season of DC's Legends, and I like that series, Legends of Tomorrow.
Is that okay?
Yeah, it's already come and gone, and I love that show. I think it's always consistently funny, interesting. I like the characters, I like the performances, but I just haven't found time where I can sit down and catch up. So,
but you know what? In this age of streaming, like if you think about it, is like with television, like I'm finding with cable television, there's less and less shows that I really want to watch. Whereas most of the shows I want to watch are Netflix and Disney and Apple TV these days, right? Or Prime. But yeah, like so, this is FX is a channel that seems to have good shows, and AMC tends to as well. But yeah, I mean, like regular cable television, there's a few shows I watch, but yeah, they're just not holding up, which is kind of interesting. But that said, if you miss a show, you can almost, now that streaming is a thing, you can always go back to that channel, and they 9 times out of 10 have that piece that you can catch up on. If you miss like an episode, you can go back and watch the streamed version, and not always live kind of thing, but you can go back and catch up on what you missed. I do want to, since we're talking about it, I was going to make a comment about The Walking Dead, because as I said, I'm watching this final season of The Walking Dead to try and catch up. I mean, I spoke to George Stroumboulopoulos about it once, and I asked him why he doesn't watch The Walking Dead. Because he goes, I know how it's going to end. It's not. It's just going to keep going on and on and on and on, right? And it's a good call, because watching this show, we follow Norman Reedus, who plays one of the main characters on the show, along with Carol and Maggie. But he ends up meeting this crew of people this time, and they're led by this really sort of megalomaniacal leader who's got this sort of vibe around him, and it just it's the people suck all over again, this whole crew follow this guy who's a real jerk and a killer, like if he doesn't like you, he just kills you kind of thing. I mean, the show hasn't changed in, the many years that I've been watching it, right? Like it started out really interesting the first couple of seasons, like how do you survive this sort of craziness? And then they just started pushing the envelope. I mean, by the time they got to Negan,
then it just became murder porn.
Yeah, well, Negan, to me, and even on the show afterwards, The Talking Dead, they do a killing the zombies count. I mean, it's just for the sake of just killing zombies. Like, why are we watching this show, right? Kind of thing. Like, it's supposed to have a human drama, and The Walking Dead are the people who are alive, not the zombies, right? Because they've all been infected, and they're all eventually going to turn, right? But there've been some interesting plot points, like a baby being born in the middle of this thing, and the mother dying, and what the son has to do about it as a young boy, and all that kind of stuff. But it's just it's so repetitive. I don't understand what the real that's why I stopped watching it like maybe 3 years ago, right? It was the same thing over and over again every week, but when they got to Negan, that's when I decided, like, why am I watching this show? What am I getting out of this show? And it was, such, like you said, murder porn, that it was just not worth it. And of course, they killed Negan kills a treasured character, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
and it was almost, you could almost be accused of whitewashing too, right?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose you could, although that had been well established as canon in the comic book version of this too.
Oh, had it? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. The 100th episode of the Walking Dead comic book was the similar, not the same story, but very similar story where Negan kills, spoilers, Glenn, and yeah, that was sort of an established thing, and it was just as devastating when it happened when I was reading those books. I was an early adopter on the Walking Dead comic books, which for my money is actually far superior to the TV show, just because it is less overwrought. It's a lot more sort of, it moves a lot faster in spite of the fact that it went on for 14, 15 years. It just it still felt like it was moving somewhere, whereas the show just felt like it's been in a quagmire. So that's what kind of lost me, was like, yeah, it's the same thing happens every week. It's like, oh, we build up this character, we introduce a new character, we introduce a new love interest, oh, but somebody tragically dies, and then and then they rebuild and they rebuild. It's basically dramatized Survivor. I kind of lost my taste for it.
Yeah, but people love it. I wonder if the same people I kind of wonder.
Too,
Yeah, but I mean, like how many seasons? I don't even know what season this is, but I mean, like, the question is, like, are the people who are watching today, did they watch it from the very beginning? I mean, I kind of wonder how many people started this show. Like, I watched it right from the very beginning. How many people are still with it? Or have they lost those people? Or is it just so popular that people just love this stuff, right?
Well, it's funny, too. I just listened to, there was an interview with John Bernthal on the Bill Simmons podcast this week.
Yeah.
And
because he was a character that was killed early, right?
He was. And again, same thing happened in the comic. So he sort of knew that it was a sort of short-term commitment. But... Right. And then, to be fair, they kept him a lot longer on the TV show than in the comic. I think in the comic he dies in like issue 5 or something like that. So he's really not in for very long. But yeah, but it was like kind of John Bernthal's real breakout role. He'd had some memorable small scenes, but that was really his first sort of, people were like, who is this guy? He's really good. And from there he goes on to, Wolf of Wall Street. He goes on to Punisher. He goes on to, now he's gonna be in the new Sopranos movie. All this. So he's, sort of his jumping off point. So the two of them were talking about The Walking Dead, and he sort of said, yeah, when I signed on to Walking Dead, it was Frank freaking Darabont was the person who was getting this show up off the ground. Frank Darabont's, Shawshank Redemption. Like, this is an all-time great, movie creator who was taking this concept and turning it into a show. And he said, yeah, I absolutely wanted to be on that. But he's like, I was only on for like 2 seasons and then I was gone. And he's like, I keep in touch with those people and I'm close with them and everything else. But he's like, that show has become something completely different. Like, it's this huge global phenomenon and everything else, but it's also not the same show that I signed on for. And I thought that was pretty astute, that it really has sort of turned into a whole other thing just because of its popularity and the spin-offs and the Talking Dead and just the culture around it and the Dead Cons and all that stuff. Like, it really has just sort of become this other thing. But it's also, we talked about it before, but like, some TV just hangs on too long, like, there's something to be said, like, we're talking about Why the Last Man, The Preacher, Transmetropolitan, The Sandman. Some of my favorite comic stories over the last, 20, 30 years were about a beginning, a middle, and an end. They were always intended to be a story that begins, middle, and ends. Think about Breaking Bad. Like, if they had done more, it would have become bloated and unwieldy, and it probably would have lost some interest and everything else. Part of the problem is that, Walking Dead just keeps going.
Yeah. Like, we are the Walking Dead watching the show.
Bang on.
But just to follow up on something Jaime asked about it when I first started talking about Walking Dead this season, is we're in season 11, by the way. You asked if it was a 3-part finale, and it looks like it is, because they're doing 8 episodes until October, and then they come back in 2022 for another 8 episodes, and then it's supposed to end sometime. Episode 24 is supposed to be in 2022 as well. So sounds like it is going to be in 3 chunks, Jaime.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I don't know if I'll make it to episode 24, to be honest with you. I might watch episode 24, but I don't know if I'll make it all the way through. Yeah, because just like you said, the spin-offs. So we've got the World Beyond, which is a new series, which apparently is coming and going this season. There's Red Machete. There's Fear the Walking Dead, of course. And then there's another thing called Origins, which I don't know if... Yeah, it's 2021, so it's still around. So who knows? Craziness. Oh, an untitled The Walking Dead movie. We have that to look forward to, starring Andrew Lincoln.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and it's funny because one of those points that was raised in the interview with John Bernthal was, him sort of saying, it's this is the network at the time that was most famous for Mad Men and Breaking Bad, two of the most prestigious, lauded, awarded, beloved dramas of ever. And it's funny that those shows have sort of gone by the wayside. They've never really been able to rekindle that high prestige drama. HBO kind of took the title back from them on that, and a few other players have gotten into the game, and AMC really hasn't clicked on that. And now when I think of AMC, and I don't think of them often, which I'm, again, for something that was indispensable 10 years ago, indispensable. I remember having a conversation with somebody at my cable provider 10 years ago saying, I don't care what package I need, I have to have AMC.
Really?
Where legitimately, like I couldn't not watch Breaking Bad. I couldn't not watch Mad Men. I couldn't there's some stuff that you just had to watch. Whereas now, like I don't think I've watched AMC in 5 years.
Really? Okay, yeah. I watch it all the time.
It just for me, one, I don't watch a ton of cable television outside of sports. I watch it. That's why I have a cable still. But if I want to watch something, like they're just not at the front of mind. And there have been some shows that have come and gone where I've been interested. They do still have Better Call Saul, which I adore. But there's just not a lot of high prestige drama going on over there anymore, which is, again, it's funny how they've just sort of morphed from we're Mad Men and Breaking Bad to this.
Mm-hmm. Well, we just have to see how far we get with it.
And that's been your really, really long episode edition of this week's watch list.
Yeah, exactly. Alrighty, so hey, I guess that's it for another week. So, Jonathan, if people can get in touch with you, where would they find you?
You can always find me on Twitter and Instagram as @JPKNews.
And Jaime, if people can get in touch with you,
I'm on Twitter as @DevWithAHair.
He's also on More Than Just Code, just for those of you wondering. And my name is Tim Mitra. I am TIMMITRA on the Twitter machine is where you'll find me hanging out. So until next time, we'll see you in the future. Bye.
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 You've been listening to the Spotcast podcast. If you want to find out more about the podcast or see the episode show notes, visit the Spotcast website at spotcast.com. You can get in touch with us on the website or follow us on Twitter at Spotcast. If you have feedback or questions, send us a tweet with the hashtag AskSpotcast. If you like the show, please consider recommending us to a friend, writing a review on iTunes, or pledging any amount at patreon.com/Spotcast. You can find details on how to help us on our website, spotcast.com/sponsor us. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the future.
Are you waiting for me to say bye and you guys say bye at the same time? Or is that how that works?
Yeah, we wait for you to go first.
Yeah.
Okay, because I always try to hesitate so we can say it at the same time.
We can mix it up. We just, we're sort of waiting for it. You can go and re-edit it so that I say it first,
Yeah, that's true. You're right. I can actually do that, but I just couldn't be bothered. It's too much work.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, which actually was a shorter show than normal ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the Lower Decks had that much to talk about this time. So.
Yeah, it was, again, it was a funny episode. I thought, I laughed and everything, but it certainly wasn't as rich in the lore and the Easter eggs. I'm sure there's way more in there if you spend some time digging, but it didn't feel quite as steeped as some of the other episodes this season.
So the number one TV show this week is Money Heist. Have you guys seen Money Heist? I've seen the first 3 seasons.
I haven't.
It's a Spanish TV show about a heist initially, but yeah, this crew of thieves end up, I guess they keep going. And there's another one here called Clickbait, which sounds like something for Jaime. And then What If is number 3, Rick and Morty is number 4, Walking Dead is number 5, and 9 Perfect Strangers is number 6. But who knows what that means? Number 7 is Only Murders in the Building. Ted Lasso is number 8.
Oh, Ted Lasso was so good this week. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Episode 8.
Is that the one with the bike?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God, what an amazing... It was a long episode too. It was like 45 minutes or 50 minutes.
Was it? Yeah.
But oh my God, what great television that week, this week's episode, between the stuff with the doctor, the stuff with Ted,
and the dating app.
And Jamie with his dad. Like, oh my God, that show is good. I
love Jamie. I love Jamie when he's talking to somebody, to the team, and they'll say something to him about, like, this is how you treat people, blah, blah, blah. You got to, treat them with respect. And he just, like, he's having trouble with Keeley, right? Mm-hmm. And then he goes, "Fuck," and he goes off. Or they were trying to teach his niece not to swear.
Oh, that's Roy Kent. Yeah, not Jamie. Roy.
Yeah.
The whole story with him and his niece. Yeah, it's like, you're a big influence on her. Am I?
Yeah. Actually, it's funny because I'm watching Mr. Gordon, which is a TV show on Apple TV, starring guy with 3 names. From Third Rock from the Sun.
I've seen the trailer for that. What's his name?
Guess who plays his girlfriend?
It's Keeley, right?
It's Keeley, and it's like so I watch Ted Lasso, and then I go watch her play Mr. Norman, and I'm waiting for her to slip up her American accent. And she never does. It's amazing, but it's weird because you're looking at her, you're going, wait a minute, that's Keeley, but she's, because I kind of wonder now if she's putting on the accent that she does in Ted Lasso, because she's got all those affectations of the class she lives in, and the is Yorkshire, isn't it, or something like that, or I'm not sure where it is.
Yeah, I don't think it's Yorkshire, but she definitely has a very working class
distinct
accent.
Distinct accent. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's kind of interesting.
Well, and she's the perfect juxtaposition because, Rebecca has this perfect, elocution, high class, like that's the whole gag, right? The two of them are sort of the odd couple. Yeah, that's another one it's an interesting season so far. I'm curious to see how they stick the landing on the next 2 episodes.
Yeah.
And then I have to decide whether or not I want to keep my Apple TV Plus subscription, or if I can let it go for do the Jaime routine and let it go for a while, because I so far have not really gotten into anything else on Apple TV Plus, because it was free up until the beginning of Ted Lasso season 2, and then I was like, well, I'm in now, so I'm paying for it for a couple months. But now, I have to decide. I know you guys were suggesting Mythic Quest. That's one that's sort of been on my I ought to watch at some point list, so I might watch that before I pull the plug. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm probably going to wait for C is out soon, if not already. Ted Lasso should be wrapping up soon, and then we'll probably go back in when Servant season 3 comes out. Is probably where we'll do it in this household.
No more seasons of Paw Patrol coming that you got to stay tuned for.
They just have their big movie, just wait for the cinematic aspect.
Yeah, well, you never know. It could be. What do they call it? Going to call it Paw World, John? What do you think?
That's right. So, just out of curiosity, if they were showing that in IMAX, would you make the effort?
No, this was just a Sunday afternoon. Let's put something in the background, and I was paying enough attention to say, "Wait a minute, this is better than I thought it would be."
Yeah. Well, just be glad you have a dog and not a kid, because you'd probably end up watching that show about 1,000 times. Peppa Pig. Yep. What did you watch? Cars, right? Cars, Jonathan. Cars. Yeah. I watched Wall-E. Cars. We watch Octonauts now is the big one. You got to get into the Octonauts universe there, Jaime.
Maybe they'll have a gritty live action remake or something I can get into.
Octonautathon. Yeah, we need to go to Octonautathon. Yeah.
Did I see something about Mobile Suit Gundam this week? Did you see something about that, Jaime? I swear I saw that as a headline, and I meant to go back and look at it.
A new show? No, I wasn't aware, but I saw that there was news of a new Gundam statue that's being built somewhere in Japan. That'll be the largest one so far. I wonder if that news is timed.
First new Mobile Suit Gundam anime series in 7 years. They just announced this the other day. Yeah, it was on Gizmodo. First new TV entry in the franchise since 2015's Iron-Blooded Orphans.
Wait,
first entirely new Gundam TV series.
Are they considering like Unicorn and all the other ones to be like not mainline, and that's where it feels like that's newer if you say like any Gundam animated stuff, but
Mobile Suit Gundam. Yeah, this is the first one since Iron-Blooded Orphans. Mobile Suit Gundam, The Witch from Mercury, or G-Witch for short. Again, I'm not steeped enough in the lore to understand the differences, but I figured you might. Yeah, it was yesterday afternoon they announced this. Yeah, I actually, in the spirit of sort of coming back to my love of anime, which has certainly waned over the last number of years, I have at the top of my Netflix to watch list, I decided I'm going to watch Neon Genesis Evangelion. That's something that has always escaped me, and that everyone I know who likes anime keeps saying, I can't believe you haven't watched that. So that's where I've decided to dip back in at some point soon.
Evangelion? Yeah, I saw that on the Netflix. Is there like this is the third movie though, right? Or third piece?
Yeah, the whole thing is on Netflix. Here in Canada anyway.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have the 25 TV series episodes. You have, I forgot how they break it down. I think they do 2. I think Death in Air or Rebirth, I forget what they renamed it, is one movie, and then End of Evangelion is the second movie from like the original stuff. Then you have the rebuild of Evangelion, which is 4 movies. Here they were on Amazon Prime. I don't know. You said they're all on Netflix for the newer movies too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. I'm trying to remember what's here. Yeah, every time I go on, I like bookmark all these things. And I'm like, oh yeah, I still haven't watched Sweet Tooth. Like this stuff just keeps creeping up. It's like, damn it, I still haven't watched that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it looks like there is all the TV episodes of Evangelion are here, and then I think the movies are as well, but they're separate. They're in a separate queue.
Yeah, I've been watching Doug Days. That's pretty sad too, right?
Oh, but it's so good. It's so funny. We watched that a couple weeks ago, and I laughed my butt off. Yeah. Did you get to the one about the fireworks?
No, I've only watched Puppies in the first one.
Oh, keep going. It is. You're right though. It is like absolutely gut wrenching, especially in the wake of Ed Asner's passing. But it man, it hits you in the feels as good Disney does. But it's
well, he's so funny, Doug. Eh?
Yeah,
because he's barking and he's talking at the same time.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, and then again, the first episode he's fighting with the squirrel, and then he's trying to teach the puppies, and it just keeps going like that. There's so many funny moments.
You have sharp teeth, puppies.
Yes, you have sharp teeth.
Yes. Yeah. That is my toy. Yeah.
That is my favorite toy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he gives him the toy at the end. It's nice.
Yup. Yeah. Good stuff.
Anyway. All right, folks. Time to check out.
Okay.
I have a feeling I'm going to be talking to a customer in a few minutes.
Fun.
All righty.
All right.
Yeah.
See you next week, guys.
Okay, bye.
Later.
Yeah.
Bye.